right, good evening. We have another night of dual meetings. So to start, I'm going to call the meeting of the Cumberland Fiscal Management Subcommittee to order at 5:34. First order, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Ms. Smith, second by Ms. Vogel. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it, 3-0. The agenda is passed. And now I'll turn it over to Chairperson Friedman to convene the full meeting.
I'd like to call to order the Cumberland School Committee on Tuesday, March 26, 2024 at 5:35 p.m. First item on the agenda is approval of agenda. I need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mrs. Rogalski.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Vogel. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That passes 6-0. For the record, Mrs. Feather is not in attendance tonight. Next item on the agenda, discussion and a vote of the fiscal year 2025 superintendent's proposed school budget. Dr. Thornton.
Andrew, a couple of things. I know we have our middle school principals here tonight to give us some info from last week. Before they come up and do their presentation, just a couple quick thoughts for things you may want to consider doing with the budget. First, we did hear from the state today on state aid. Remember, we had the last $500K we were hoping to receive. Looks like we'll get 100 of that, 100K. So at some point, I would recommend you make a motion to reduce the revenue by 400,000. That's kind of confirmed now. We gain 100, we don't get the 5 that's currently in the budget. That's one recommendation. To offset that, I would recommend you do not include the 3 essentials high school jobs, so a -3 for 300K to help kind of take care of that 400. The last 400, I'd recommend you put it in fund balance for 1.1 million in fund balance. So that would put you back in balance. So once again, state aid's 100, not 500, right? We have a $400,000 problem. I'd recommend you reduce the 3 high school jobs and essentials for 300 and 100 in the fund balance. That puts you back in balance if you consider doing these things. 100 in fund balance. Total of 1.1. Just once again, as far as structural deficits go, that's the 1.1 plus the BVP one-time money. We're like a 1.6. Right, so just give you a sense of where we are for as far as structural deficit. Okay, thank you. If I could call upon the middle school. Oh, I'm sorry.
Ms. Smith.
Sorry to ask questions so fast in the meeting. Is that 100,000 because they re-looked at that 26 million the governor removed, or is
No.
it because of our numbers?
Our numbers. We gained 30 more
Thank you.
kids. The governor's numbers are still his numbers. We gained 30 kids. We get 30 more kids of state aid. It's 100K, give or take.
Right, so it's not part of the 500 that we know that we're not getting that should have been included in the formula.
I still hold a hope, Ms. Smith, that we may get that, but not as of yet. Oh, I have one more thing, if I could, Madam Chair. I want a big thank you to Ms. Smith. Last week, past several months, she's been really diligent with the busing and looking at busing and efficiencies and routing. And we did talk with Steve Schmuck of Durham and look at our routing. And I know last Monday we talked about 26 buses, and really we think they actually double counted one. It's really a 25. So thank you, Ms. Smith. So we'll see 90,000 more into fund balance for this year. We are recommending that you keep the 26th bus until at least August, because we want to pick up some statewide runs. And that extra bus, we could pick up statewide runs and maybe have some big savings. If we don't get the savings by August, you can cut the bus before we start the year, and then we'd have a -2. So that's -1, excuse me. So anyway, thank you, Ms. Smith, for that. But that would be 190,000 more for fund balance, give or take, for this year we're in. So that's a good outcome. So with that, if I could call up the middle school team. We're going to try to answer questions you had from last week on class sizes and also, I believe, attendance, that kind of thing. That was from last week's meeting. So, Ms. Storm, thank you for coming out.
Oh, thank you. Good evening. So there were some questions in regards to teaming versus not teaming and numbers. So I was able to, I'll probably move the podium a little bit so I can see what you guys see. Do a small data dive into class sizes now versus what it would look like teaming. Mr. Chandler, if you could hit the next one. So you're going to see this information on 2 slides. On the next slide after this has the same data, just formatted a little bit differently, a little bit easier on the eyes. So right here at the top, you see teaming versus non-teaming. So the first layer up at the top is where we are currently. So in grade 6, above the grade 6, It says teaming, we have currently 159 students. The average class size is 20 students per class. Going to the right, currently 165 students, non-teaming model, average of 14 to 29. So that's the span, 14 students to 29 students per class. Going further to the right, in grade 8, we have currently 149 students, ranging from 16 to 29 students per class. So that's currently the snapshot of classrooms at McCourt overall, from a 30,000-foot view. Lower our hopes for next year, 24-25. As of right now, from Lori Carr at Central, projected from 3/7/24, we will have 153 students next year in grade 6. With teaming, that will average 19 students per class. For grade 7, we're projected at 160 students, average of 20 students per class. For grade 8, we are going up in grade 8. We have 167 students projected to come in with an average of 21 students. So that bottom line is if we go to teaming. The next slide will have the same information, just set up in a different way for you in order to compare and contrast a little bit differently. Any questions on those two before I continue? Yeah.
Ms. Storm, thank you. This shift right now, I don't think this is going to be an issue, but are there any sort of issues with collective bargaining with the CTA in this shift down at your school?
Not that I'm aware of. I know they're in support of teaming,
Okay, fair enough.
but I don't know of any contractual issues within CTA negotiations. The next slide, please. I think this one had a little glitch. If you click one more time, it should come up with another one. And you should have these in your drive. I did send them over. If not, I can personally send them over this evening for you. So this right here, this is where we're going to dive a little bit deeper. You, Ms. Smith, I believe you asked class by class. So that's what this represents. There's a hyperlink at the top that we can click on later that will give you a complete Google Sheet breakdown so you can see if it's ELA and the numbers going straight down. I was also able to highlight when we dive into that one, the 27, the amount of students in each class, 27 being the limit, 29 being the absolute limit according to the contract. So you'll see all those highlighted, and you'll see more when we go to 7 and 8, and also those phys ed classes. So if you take a look at these, and they're pretty much mostly the same, I highlighted the 4 core areas. So up here is ELA and math first. All the way to the left is grade 6. Grade 7 is in the middle, and grade 8 spikes up on the right-hand side of those. So you see grade 6 is low, semi-even going across. Grade 7 and 8, you see those, the lower and the higher numbers, those disparities between some of those classes. Can you go to the next slide, please? The next slide is science and social studies, pretty much mirroring what the previous slide was, almost even. When you look at grade 6, there are a little couple, I'm not going to say snafus, but due to the scheduling issues that we had in September, October, that's why you see some of those disparities due to other classes. Would you like me to put up the data dive from the class and the specific number in each so you can see it? Okay. All right, and you have that access through the, yep, and you have that access through the hyperlink if you want to dive a little bit deeper. You do have access to that. I gave you access. Any questions on class sizes and or teaming? All right, thank you. So the next question was in regards to attendance. So I was able to break down and share with you our daily attendance percentages. I will go over truancy and what we're doing to flip the script, so to speak, and to do a little bit more work at McCourt. Mr. Chandler, are you able to click on the hyperlink daily attendance at all, or no? It's up. Thank you. So when you see this, when you go in your drive, at the bottom, it's all by month, and you will see the daily percentages by grade level. Most, I would say a good portion of the time, we're above 92, 93% in attendance at McCourt. So you will see the daily breakdown by grade level in there. So I think we got March. Yep, so that would be this week. So if you go left to right, you'll see all the averages, the grade levels, and the percentages. Yes.
I do have a question, only because I had asked for a log for the community facilitator position that we created. I actually just sent you the log so you guys can reference this. I just emailed it to everybody. So what I'm noticing in the community facilitators part-time log are the contacts they have regarding attendance and some of these issues you're raising right now. How often do you utilize the community facilitator at McCork? So I'm seeing, I'm trying to go.
Are you speaking towards Jackie Hooper, the truancy
No,
officer?
no, the position that was created out of Mr. Damana's office, they do kind of a quasi-interpreter service. You know, what I'm looking at right there, interpreting for parents, especially students who come from non-English speaking households. Have you been able to utilize that position at all, or, because I know primarily.
I have not yet, no.
So fair enough. So it looks like the majority of what I shared with you is directly BF Norton. So one of the things I don't want to get ahead of myself right now. It's short money, but it's proven to be very effective at BF. Does that sound like something you could use? Somebody who would, even Miss Cruz's calls that she has to deal with, she can help facilitate that. If there's a student who's on one of the percentages of students who can't make it to school and nobody knows, perhaps Miss Hooper doesn't know, that they could get in there and maybe what's going on with the family.
Right, as another layer of support,
It is another layer,
absolutely.
and it's been modeled after the district I work in, and we tried it out last year, and it's a 30-hour part-time, so that's something that full disclosure, I've come into this meeting ready to advocate for. So I'm just asking you now, if that is something that you think you could utilize.
Absolutely, we'd definitely be interested, yes.
So, I'm one that does a lot of the contacts with the families, so I've been able to, any of the families I've needed to contact, I've been able to have communication with. So I'm definitely aware of her services, so if it was a family that I couldn't communicate, through English, obviously, I would definitely reach out to her.
Yeah, and the way the position was designed, it wasn't just for non-English speaking families. You know, she obviously speaks English as well. So that kind of stuff, because I know both of you how incredibly busy you are just on the day-to-day instructional leadership, just, you know, putting fires out, making sure, you know, why is the fire alarm going off? You know, that type of stuff. Anything that can free you up and meet the needs of the family and all students, is something yeah, thank you.
That's okay, thank you. So that, I'm sorry?
Couple questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. How are we trending from the beginning of the school, where we knew we had problems in the first few months, to where we are now?
I think we are steady throughout the year. Obviously, there are some spikes. We have a lot of sickness. We had the flu. We have everything going on. So we got our peaks and our valleys in regards to attendance. We are worse off than we were last year. The next slide, when we go on it, is the ride attendance tool that we adequately use. The reporting that goes to Ride on the Daily through the Aspen portal through attendance, those report whether you're absent or not. They do not take into account excused absences with doctor's notes. Okay. So when you look at the Ride portal on that slide, you are going to see that we're actually 5.37, I believe, % worse than last year in regards to our attendance. So noting that, getting our procedures in line, Ms. Holman and I are working hand in hand. We just sent out to the families that we are going to be doing a positive attendance, I'm going to say soiree because I always forget that second word that we use, a positive attendance. So if they do not miss more than 2 days worth of school from yesterday through the end of May and are not tardy more than 3 times, they'll be invited to an event the last block of one of the days as like a celebration of positively being in school. So we're going to work on that. We're going to trial that now. If it has a positive outcome, we're going to be doing that each trimester next year. So showing value in being here, showing up every day, getting the lessons, staying on task, and being academically ready to go. Yes.
Realistically, where would you want the number to be, the daily number, percentage?
The percentage, I liked 97% would be my goal. I believe that's a realistic goal for our building. Any other questions? I hope, Ms. Smith, I was able to answer the questions that you, yep, all right, you're welcome. Yep, yep. Yeah, yep. Anytime you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out, and I'll do the best I can. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. So, other discussions, questions about the budget before we would move into potential vote for the budget? Well, actually, and amendments. May I ask you, Dr. Thornton, so we have on here item 4, discussion and a vote to approve the school budget amendments. Before that, though, we have the discussion or vote on the school budget itself. So, wouldn't we have to vote on the amendments before we vote on the budget?
I think right now, it's the superintendent's budget till it's your budget. So I think you can really adopt what you want. I'm just telling you from what I gave you last week, I'm asking you make these changes. And again, it's going to be your budget. So whatever you want to do to kind of, move forward that process. Just my thing is having you reconcile the loss in state aid and balancing as I give it to you. And then you all can do what you need to do.
But the budget that you're giving to us, the budget that we would vote on, would have the revenue reduced by 400,000? Yes. Or it's not?
Yeah, the committee needs to make that change because the superintendents that we brought forward has since needs that adjustment from the news
Okay.
we got today. So there would need to be at least that amendment to adjust that
Yeah.
revenue. You could leave it in, but it would be ill-advised since we know that number is incorrect at this point, so.
I do have a question on the sheet you passed out. I'm sorry, the sheet you passed out here. I'm looking, there's a couple things in there, and I just maybe need some explaining.
Which sheet are you referring to?
This is the fiscal year 2023-24 school year. It has student enrollment, the number of teachers we have, so on and so forth.
Got it, thank you.
And then so I'm guessing that, like, I'm looking at Garvin, for example, interventionist math, you have 2 this year, this current school year, but it says 2 plus 1. I think, is that 2 plus or 2 minus? Because these are 2 separate spreadsheets, so. Yeah, so if you go towards the bottom, I'm curious what the plus 1 means. Or is that plus 1 or minus?
It's a minus one.
What's the minus 1?
I believe it's a minus, we had
Two
one.
of those jobs were ESSER, and we're trying to recover those jobs, so it's a -1, so we can keep the 1 at Garvin, Yep. At McCourt, I'm sorry.
So, yeah, because I'd hate to see Garvin lose an interventionist. Is that something you're considering?
No, it's a worthy add to the budget. It's just for us, it was a question of just trying to balance and pick the, we're adding right now, I believe, 17 approximate jobs between ESSER and proposed new positions. It's a worthy add. It's just something that was in the parking lot. We just didn't have it on the list yet. In terms, just a little more flavor on that. In terms of intervention, we have math and ELA intervention, right? And we have the need at at Garvin for both. And, should we, have the wherewithal or the idea to fund it, it's certainly a good add to us. It's just a question of if we can't add everything, we have the McCourt jobs, we have all these things we're looking at doing. What do we do with that? I mean, one thing you could do, you could do swaps. Like, for example, last meeting we talked about adding the Dean of Culture, right? You could take that out and put in the Garvin interventionist. All those are your choices to make. They're all good positions. It's just what do you want to put in?
Yeah, because, I mean, obviously, I advocate for culture, but, when I'm looking at the potential of a school like Garvin, who's, is definitely emerging, is doing very well compared to where they were maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I just don't want to take our foot off the gas, you know what I mean? Because that could be,
It's a worthy ad.
that's something I would be more, at least me, I mean, obviously the committee would have to approve, but I just want to make sure that we're not cutting things that are needed. You know what I mean? I understand how limited our resources are, but
I would say we have a lot of needs. It's just you
Yeah.
have the fun job of prioritizing what gets in, right? They're all good ideas.
So, and as everyone knows, Mrs. Vogel and I have been meeting with the CTA for the contract negotiations. And one of the things that's really come up is the need for mental health workers. And it's something that I think Mrs. Vogel and I feel really strongly about, is that we need some more positions in the schools to help our teachers, because, as I will speak solely as the chair of the Health and Wellness Committee, we're very aware of the mental health issues. We're implementing, the Kyle Cares program in the high school for mental health awareness. And so we know that right now in the district, there's a lot of mental health issues. And so I think having that support is really key. And it came through as really something important to the teachers. And so in speaking with other people, I think that I would like to propose to add 2 elementary school counselors, 2 district-wide social workers, and 2 school psychologists to the budget. And I know that we're talking about, we're only getting 100,000 in state aid, but I think this is something that is very important, especially at the elementary level, which is what they were saying, to really help the elementary school kids and to get them extra people in there to work with them, starting on their social and emotional, starting at a young level. We're going to see that grow as they get older.
Just to clarify, and if everyone correct me, folks down this end, adding the 2 elementary guidance would give every elementary a 1.0 guidance, is that correct? Yep.
can I just, a point of clarification, just so I can write this down? I'm not saying I disagree. What were those positions, Mr. Rogowski? How many were you advocating for?
2 elementary counselors, 2 district-wide social workers, 2 district-wide school psychologists. So 2, 2, and 2, a total of 6 positions, which would be approximately $600,000 ad.
In terms of the second one, just a little flavor for you, for the committee. The national standard is 250 to 1 for social workers. We currently have 3 on the books, so we are 17 under what the standard would be. Certainly adding 2 would be welcomed. It's good. You would have, a total of 5 if you did that.
And I think just having those resources for teachers, taking one more thing, attempting to help them in one more way would just, help administration, it would help teachers, it would help students.
Yeah. The only question we would have on our side of the ledger is, as far as the revenue, how does the committee want to pay for it? Do we want to increase the ask to the town? Do you want to put it on fund balance or some other a mechanism that you would want to do for that? So we have to balance, right?
We're meeting tomorrow night as well, too. And I think Ms. Rogowski raises an excellent point. But where are we meeting?
Well, we only have that meeting scheduled if we don't come to agreement.
No, I understand. And what is, I agree with her, and my line of thinking is very similar to hers. And then what I always have to do is, I find those things that are necessary, and then the sticker shock kicks in, and then we have to figure out how to make it work financially. So I would just ask, I don't think anybody would disagree with Mr. Rogowski, but we have to figure out how we make this work, and even if there's some sort of compromise, how do we increase mental health? Even if it's half positions and stuff like that, it's better than what we have now, and it could be cost effective. And I'm just throwing that out there just because I can't help but think of the prices.
I would say, given the job market, it's really hard to find part-time people in these expert positions.
But you can do share positions, which is very common
You
in this
can
district.
do that, yeah.
A 0.5 is better than a 0, you know what I mean? And you have to split schools.
Oh, Mr. Rogowski, Mr. Fierro.
we have to remember also that we do have a cap on what we can ask the town. We also have just fiscal responsibility when it comes to using surplus funds. And quite honestly, I don't really see a need for tomorrow night's meeting, because regardless of what we do this week, it's all aspirational until we get final numbers, not just from the state, but especially from the town. And then we have to really figure out where the money's gonna come from and how big of a hole we're gonna dig for the next school committee.
What is our ask to the town currently, and how much can we ask?
So our current ask is the 1.2 million you'll see right here. And that would be a 2.5% increase of this 48 million number you see here. By my estimation, we could go up on this 4%, which would be $1.9 million. So if we added 6 million to that, we'd be looking at 1.8. So 600,000 of that, we'd be at 1.8, we'd be right up against that. So-
Okay, so we could ask more. We're not guaranteed it, but we could always ask more and see where we fall.
Yeah, we could always ask up to the 4%, I believe, is what the
About
maximum.
what, 3.9?
Yeah, we'd be right up against it,
3.9?
yep.
Okay.
The only thing is,
Thanks.
in years past, though, even before my time on the committee as an observer, what would happen is the school that we've really done, I think we've done an effective job, especially the last 3 or 4 budget cycles. Whereas the school department would come in asking for 4%, the town would tell you you're not getting 4%. So I know in a lot of the collaboration, started with Mr. Brignano and now Mr. McGrath, is, and I've been asking for this too, don't ask for something unreasonable. I mean, the thing is, we can ask for it, but if we're not going to get it, we're wasting our time, you know what I mean? So I think we also have to go in considering what the ask of the town is going to be reasonable. Even if the mayor goes for it, you still have to get the town council to approve it. And, yeah, I mean, it's worth a shot, but I think we could also have those discussions instead of, and then what happens in years past is once we don't get it, then people are down at town hall going, oh, we need this and that, and, you know what I mean? I'd like to avoid any sort of demonstrations as a result of that, and make sure whatever we ask is reasonable. And I know the town has actually been very accommodating and open-minded, even be creative with things like the achievement grant a couple of years ago. That stuff does help, so those are things just, I think, for the entire committee to consider, because if we go down there and ask for it, we don't get it, then we've kind of wasted our time up there right now, so. Sorry, Mike.
So Dr. Thornton, I just want to reconfirm, the 79 million plus budget was one that included the 18 positions. You're recommending that we not
It
do the 18?
was 17, give or take, 17, I believe. If I'm wrong, correct me.
I thought it was 18 that we originally had, and that, so you're saying you would not recommend the 3 high schools, so that will drop some of these numbers differently. We don't have that.
Correct.
New updated chart yet with the 100,000. We don't have that new updated chart with the potential 90,000 into
Yep.
the fund balance.
And what we could do is Thursday night or tomorrow night, we can give you the updated charts with, and maybe even in red, the highlighted.
If you're looking for the state aid. We won't have the state aid one until June. That was just an email that came out. So that chart won't get updated until probably it usually seems like it comes through July 4th weekend is when we get that update. So we won't have that. We're just estimating from what we've heard today that we'll have an additional 100 on top of that 25.
Right, so but you're going to put that onto here for now so that we
Yeah.
have it, even though we know that it's not a guaranteed number,
Yes.
but we do
Yep.
anticipate that number.
Yeah, I feel more comfortable with that number than the 500,000 at this point, I think, Dr. Thornton.
I was just wondering if we put any of your proposed discussions in a different color on this chart, we could then give you a sense of what you're wrestling with, what ideas you have, and you could choose on with Thursday night what you want to do.
So what we have right now does have the 17 or 18 positions in here already. I know that you're making recommendations to
Yes.
remove some of those. So we do know that that's with the 2.5% increase that we've requested from the town and the use of the fund balance that you have shown here.
Correct.
So we do have some leeway. Like, I strongly, strongly would fight against taking those 4 teachers away from McCourt. We need to get into, we need to get into the teaming. We need to
No,
go
the,
forward with that,
the-
and that's in here, so.
That's in.
It is
Right.
in.
That's in.
It was the high school that we.
Right.
The 3 I was
wanted to
looking at,
confirm that.
not that I want to recommend it, but if I have to reduce something for the state aid, I would take the 3 high school essentials ads I was looking at doing to move the high school needle. McCourt is right now not a discussion, it's in. right now.
It isn't.
But it's not in, on this paper that you gave us tonight. Am I reading that correctly, that it's not included here? Because I can see the plus ones where you're moving and shifting other positions, but that it's not reflected on here? So the high school ones and the McCourt ones are not reflected on this for the
That's
numbers?
correct, but it is in the budget.
And I just wanted to reconfirm on that fact, that it's still in the budget, though?
Yes.
Okay. So we do know, I'm sorry, so we do know that, you were making recommendations to get down to 11, but the budget itself had those 18, and that we do know if we can go in with 2.5% there, and we have to make some adjustments, but we get the 2.5% from the town, we could potentially have something to move around afterwards when we go into details, once we can get a budget approval. Is that pretty accurate?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Collins?
So one thing is that I would advocate for is, obviously, I'm glad we raised the issue of teaming, and I think it's good to hear that that's in the budget. But to Ms. Rogalski's point, if we're going to add something, McCourt, obviously, the teaming situation, we did receive like a very a presentation at our last meeting, talking about the culture and all that other, et cetera, which I obviously agree with entirely. But when it comes to actually direct helping of the kids, it sounds like the more pressing need is the teaming at McCourt, and I'm entirely in agreement with that. But with our limited resources, one thing I'd be open to meet the needs. I think 600,000 might be hard, but it doesn't mean we can't do something. I'd be willing to take off the community, the director of culture, in order to get a mental health professional. And also, I think it is imperative that Garvin keep the specialists that they need. And I'm also advocating for a community facilitator, because if you take a look at the spreadsheet, what they do, they're not going to get any credit. They're not going to get the name in the newspaper or anything like that. But it frees up. One of the challenges is that everybody is overworked. To Ms. Rogalski's point, teachers are trying to teach, but there's a crisis that they have to deal with because there's lack of support. I think a community facilitator, I think it was $30,000 line item, part-time, no benefits. I think that is, and I would argue, and it's hard to figure out just yet, that with the things they do, like encouraging people to fill out the free and reduced lunch forms and things like that, and become engaged, I think it's minimally impactful to the budget because we get money on the other end. If you take a look at what they're doing, and it sounds like they're doing all their work at BF Norton, can you imagine what that part-time job would do at McCourt to also help move the needle and improve, and at least free up some space and some time so other people can actually do the jobs they're hired to do? Yes.
Just to keep track, we'll make a separate sheet maybe of your ideas to show you on Thursday. To keep track, proposal, maybe the Dean of Culture would come off the board, the Garvin intervention comes back on the board, and then a new .5 community facilitator on the board.
And I think just the numbers off the top of my head, we're probably looking at .5,
Yeah.
$75,000. $75,000, and then you get another $100,000 off with the community. So you had $100,000 coming in. If we could apply that to, and I know you want to put it in fund balance. But we can try the town. But if not, we do need more mental health. I mean, I agree, we need 6, of course, and then I'm going to get into, if we didn't have to pay BVP, we would have our own, we could have our own, build our own clinic on the grounds to meet all the needs, but.
I'd also want to confirm with Mr. Demana about what we're talking about the math interventionist at Garvin, because I know Tony comes to us with his data-driven plan, as we always look at, and he, in my opinion, I don't think he would remove something if he thought that it would have a negative impact. So I think we need to consider that too.
Talk a little bit more to that, but Mr. DeMonica could probably answer your question more specifically. So I was just looking back at my notes. One of those math interventionist positions was an ESSER job. And a couple of years ago, Garvin lost a reading interventionist. So I think in speaking to Ms. Carter, she's willing to lose a math interventionist to regain that reading interventionist. I don't want to speak specifically to that, but that's what I have in my notes. I know we have another meeting with Ms. Carter and some principals, so we will confirm that, but that's what I have. I believe the loss is because one of those math interventionist positions was an ESSER-funded position, and then the ask was really to get back her .5 reading specialist. So she was willing to prioritize that.
I believe that's correct. That's what I have.
Mr. Rogowski?
So for the record, fully support the community facilitator position. Like, I'm fully on board with that. I would support that 1,000% over and over again. And we speak about our limited resources, and I look and I'm listening to our conversation that we had today, and we're asking for 2.5%. We can ask for up to 4%. They can say no, the town can say no, absolutely. But we're never going to get anything if we don't try. These are important positions. We are at a crisis right now with mental health. We are at a crisis with learning. We need these positions, and we're not going to get anything we don't ask for. And so I think, yes, and there's probably politics behind the scene that I am unaware of, and there might be more to it that I don't know. And I fully admit that there's probably something that I don't know. But we are limited, but we still have wiggle room where we're not limited. And so I don't know why we wouldn't ask. I don't know why we don't ask every year to try to get what we need, because we could do so much good. We could get so much help. And we just need to ask. And my mother has always told me that I am not a fortune teller and I don't have a crystal ball. And so I cannot predict what the town would do. I don't know. But we're never going to know if we don't ask. And again, might be history. There might be other things behind it. That's why I'm not on fiscal. But we have the ability. That's all.
In terms of the numbers, if I have this right, everyone correct me, Tim, the town levy, I believe they can raise 2.8 million of new dollars, and we'd be asking for 1.8 of that 2.8. So that's the current ask we're thinking about.
The other thing that we have not discussed at all is, we've been trying for years to get a grant writer, and I don't believe that should be an actual position. I think what we should do is try to find freelance work so that we can give them a piece of whatever grants they earn. Also, I know there's probably services out there that would provide that also for a piece of the action. That might be a way to help fund certain things. I just wanted to put that out there, but I do have a question for Alicia, because I'll never get the syllables out. My question is, out-of-district placements, where are they today? Where do we expect them to be? And have you heard anything about places like the Groden Center or others that are intending on raising their tuitions for next year?
Many out of districts are raising tuition. I can tell you there's not a lot of placements out there currently. I do have students who are graduating, so it will be a little bit less. I have students that have moved out of district, so it's a little less. This year, we've kind of lost a couple, but then gained a couple, and that's solely because they've moved into district, and that's where they were. And we might have outplaced a couple more than where we were last year.
And what about our 18 to 22 population? Is that increasing, pretty much staying level?
It's staying level.
Okay, so it sounds like everything in that regard is staying reasonably level. I do know that our elementary programs are just getting more and more filled as days go by, which by August will be needed. By August, that's the other issue that we will have is, in August, we're going to have to start opening up classrooms probably. We'll have to start adding, if nothing else, TAs or whatever to the special ed classroom. So we need to always leave a little wiggle room. We can't just max out the budget now, because we know that there's going to be some needs come August.
I do have some proposals already in there for additions to special education, and that was based on the needs and the numbers and the referrals coming in. So that was a gain of one program at Garvin for our specialized program, and then a resource at BF Norton, and moving the one specialized program over back to Cumberland Hill. So that would be 4, so that would give more teachers for that population of students.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because a lot of districts end up having a problem during the school year with high-need special education that they don't have any budgeted money for. So that's always my concern.
Dr. Thorne, I just want to re-clarify. The Director of Culture and Student Services was not in this budget. Is that correct? That was a separate, with the, you were looking, or Tony was? Mr.
Last
Devon was
Thursday,
looking-
that was in the parking lot, and we were
Right.
looking at that as a good ad, worthy. All the things in the parking lot were worthy. So I guess we'd take your direction for the final meeting, whenever that meeting is, Wednesday or Thursday, and you would just tell us, what's in, what's out. We'll just give you a tabulation. But that was parking lot.
Right, so it wasn't, it wasn't in the numbers in the budget that you've given us, that we know what the numbers are right now. That was not one of the included, so it's not, we don't have those money in the budget right now to shift it.
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rogowski, I have a question about your recommendation to add 2 school psychologists district-wide, because I think we already have in our budget to add, sorry.
We have a .5 currently in the budget, I
So
believe.
So we're essentially adding 1. Currently.
One would get a 1.0, I believe, in the buildings, in the Ls. If we do that.
So we already have in our budget to add 1. So are we saying add 2 more, or are we saying, so we'd be adding 3?
Current motion is 2 more. As far as the ratios, once again, I believe that's 1 in 500, and we are a little short. We have a lot of issues and need, so certainly that would be something we would use.
So, Ms. Smith?
One last question. I'm going to get away from the teaching side of it for a moment. Do we have any idea, or do we know when we're going to be able to look in more in-depth on taking back the state busing runs, and how many of those that we potentially could get back? Because I know right now it's just budgeted to
Right.
continue with the state.
Yeah, I think right now, step 1 is, I believe, Thursday, you'll possibly entertain, discuss, maybe act on the contract for busing, right? And once you lock down your vendor, I think then we assign the task, what can we take back? So I think we'd know pretty quickly, within probably a month of locking down the contract, I think we'd know.
And what is the cost per bus on a special, or out-of-town busing that we're
Well-
using for the state? What is the state charging us right now?
Statewide all in, what is that number?
Statewide all-in is $350 in this budget, because we did propose a cut of 50 to that. So it ranges around the $400,000 range. To come up with a per bus is nearly impossible. The way that they structure it, it's per student mile, it's a ratio, it's a very difficult item to break out. But yeah, overall, what I can give you is it's 400 to 350 in that range.
So what do you think, a 25% savings if we took it in-house versus the state? Or do you
I-
think it could be higher or lower?
I would like to hope so. It's a very difficult, so there's some low-hanging fruit, right? So you've got the routes that are easily depoted and picked up in groups. But then you also have the routes that are running a kid from Cumberland to Newport. So those routes are hard to kind of shift over. So in my vision, and along with Dr. Thornton, is to kind of pick our way at them and kind of work our way through to see. That's why when we did the RFP, we looked for van pricing as well, because we want to pick away at that
That's
as well.
what I
So, but I think it's going to be a process, right? Because we need then we're getting into the business of routing and statewide routing, and that's something we need to wrestle with too, because that's a big time consumption too. Do we have the bandwidth to do that piece of it? So we've got to kind of slowly and methodically do it, I think. But I would hope that a 25% gain is available there. So
Are the proposals in any of our confidential folders for us to read through? Because you just mentioned the whole band and all of that, and I think we need to look at that with other towns, and I think it's a great idea. So I don't know, are they available in our folder? Could
I'll
we
have to
check to
check
see
to
if
see.
we
I'll check with
can,
Melody to
so
see.
we can just see what the questions are and how it is worded before we go into Thursday's
Yep, we'll do
discussions
that.
on busing? Thank you.
Mrs. Vogel?
I just want to echo quickly that the message we did receive from teachers was a need for increased mental health services. So when we do look at this budget, I definitely think we should keep that in mind. When you show us the positions, will you kind of break them down by position for the final budget on Thursday?
Yeah, I think we have to illustrate to you what is in and what is proposed, right? And you can then tell us what to put in, and we'll have this gentleman give you the running tabulation. In the end, it'll be how much fund balance, how much of an ask of the town do we have, and how many jobs are in the budget.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so to move ahead with the budget, we already have the amendment that we'd have to make to reduce the revenue by 400,000 based off of the state aid. And then also to eliminate the 3 high school essential jobs to balance that out, put 100,000 in fund balance. That would be if everything were as is with the ask of the town at 2.5%. If the committee decides that they want to ask the town, well, if the committee decides that these other positions that Mrs. Rogalski has mentioned and Mrs. Vogel, that we would want to include those in our budget, then we need to understand what's the additional impact, the amount, and then we'd have to look at potentially increasing the ask to the town in order to look at how we might balance that. So, so in order to do that, that's the information that we would need from you about, okay, with the jobs that are currently in the budget, plus the additional ones, if they're not already in the budget, we talked about community facilitator, we talked about mental health, what's the total there, and then how do we offset that?
Actually, I have an idea. You know, I think one thing we can do is if the committee wants to pursue, you know, I'm trying to caution people, that's just my opinion. But one thing the committee can do is if the committee decides to ask for 4%, I just think one thing we can do is we can have a section of positions that we want that are contingent upon getting that 4%.
Yeah.
With the understanding that if the town counters and says, you're not getting 4%, we as a committee understand those positions that we're advocating for are the ones
I
that
mean,
we're going to.
I would say that that's like any budget year where we won't know till early June, right? And then we wouldn't act on these positions until we had a budget, so.
No, 100%, because what's happened in especially my first year, when we asked for 4, we didn't get it. It was like, all right, we have this budget, and then it was like, all right, now what do we cut? So I think what happens is if we come in with a reasonable expectation of 2.5%, but ask for 1.5%, and if we get the 4%, then here's the positions we're willing to add.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if we don't get that, then we're not scrambling around trying to figure out which teacher we cut or which position we know ahead of time, as long as the committee can do whatever it wants, but
That's fair.
I think it streamlines the process, so then we don't have competing interest in people arguing over what needs to go in and what needs to go out.
Yeah.
If you were to add those 6 positions, I would just propose that the committee increase this line, this salary line, this 51001 by $600,000, because that's the average. That was where I'd be comfortable.
Yeah.
I would just increase this line by 600 and then increase this line by 600 as well.
Which would then bring the ask to what?
That would be 1.8 million, so right up again, 1.821, so right up 9.3, yeah. So it'd be 600 on top of this number right here, so what's that, 1.821? Yeah.
It would bring the town ask to what? What percentage would we be asking
It
for?
would be 3.8%, it would be right up against it.
Okay. 3.8.
I would have to do that, it's
Yeah, yeah.
approximately 3.8, because 4% is 1.9 million, so it's right there.
I think it's important, to Mr. Collins' point, that there's also some clarity about in understanding of where we would spend this money. You know, that it's very clear. We have it itemized. We know what we would do with that extra money. We have agreement on that. And so then the decision is if we're not able to get that money, then that is where we would make the cuts. And I think that makes total sense. So I think we have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow night. But also on the agenda for our open meeting on Thursday is to vote on the budget to be submitted to the mayor. So it's a continuation of the same discussion. I think in order for us to vote on the budget, we've already talked about it, we need the details of what we just discussed and be able to see, like you said, you'll have that list of positions, you'll be able to show where the impacts are. And then we can make a decision as a committee if we want to, which form of the budget we want to submit to the mayor. Yes, Ms. Smith?
Could we modify that just a touch? So sorry. I'm thinking the same way you are, though. And the reason is that we already know that the budget included those 18 or whatever, and then we went down to the 11. Okay, that included taking off the former court and the 3 high school. We already know that you're saying, let's just take off the 3 high school. Everyone's all prepared for that. So technically, what we're adding is 3 positions, not 6 positions to our budget. Because if the 3 from the high school are already in our budget, then we should be adding additional 300,000 into our ask, which then gets us probably to the 3.1% versus a 3.8, 3.9% for the town.
We still need to wrestle with the state aid reduction. Because in that scenario, we haven't reduced state aid
Oh,
by the
right,
400.
right, that's
You
right,
need-
because that's where
yeah.
you were putting it.
Yep, so you
I
need to, yeah,
apologize.
you need to wrestle with that.
Yeah,
That's
it's
good. We
all
need to
coming
talk it
back
through.
to me.
Yeah. We gotta talk it through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but basically, if you look up here, you got to reduce this needs to be
Right.
100, right? And then I would add another 100 in here, and then I would pull 300 from here, and then I would put 600 back in this line, and then put 600 up here. So it would probably look a lot like,
I was finding that, I think for simplicity's sake, we'd make a parking lot for you and a what is in the budget, the new jobs in the budget, and you guys can do the movement from there.
I just have a clarifying question. So when you come Thursday, what you're going to have is the parking lot scenario, the positions you're adding. But what you're going to have, what you're going to show us Thursday night is going to look different than what you showed us last Thursday night.
Well, the only thing is, if you vote on the first motion to cut the high school jobs, yes. Right now, nothing's changed. If you do the motion tonight to reduce state aid, cut through high school jobs, and put 100 in fund balance, then yes, you'd have 3 different jobs, 3 high school jobs not in. You would then we'd once again list for you, what are the new jobs in the budget from ESSER, the 5 or the 11 or 12 we want to add, and then the ones you've talked about, plus our parking lot, all in the parking lot, and then you'll say, motion to shift these 2 over, whatever you're going to do, you would just put them in, and he's telling you
Yeah,
600K is 6.
so everything we
Jobs.
discussed tonight would look like this. If we added the 600 here, here's your 100 of additional state aid, here's your 1 of fund balance. This is what your salary line looks like, so we took away the 3 jobs, and I added in 6 more, and then that gets us to a balanced budget if you look in the bottom.
Yeah, so and you've
So for
already,
you, it would be an activity of pulling 6 jobs from the parking lot to the budget.
and what I'm hearing is also you've already added, does it require a motion for us to add those 4 positions in McCord, or you've already done that?
They're in there.
That's in the
They're-
budget
they're
already.
already in
It's in
there.
my budget, soon to be your budget.
Okay, so it's already in there.
I think the motion that we need to make tonight is around, back to the reducing the revenue by 400,000.
Yep.
Putting 100,000 in fund balance and eliminating the 3 high school essential jobs to balance that out.
Correct.
If we make that motion, something like that tonight, then the budget that you can bring to us on Thursday will have those things in it, and then we'll be left with the discussion of the parking lot positions to add in, which will then impact the ask we have from the town, because the rest of the budget will be where it needs to be.
Correct, yeah. If that motion goes through, this is what it would look like. And then whatever jobs you add, we just need to add to the revenue from the town, is
Yeah,
basically what it comes
okay.
down to. So
All right,
we need 6 jobs, we add 600 to the salaries, and we add 600 to the revenue.
okay. So, with all that said, is there anyone who would like to make a motion? Can I make it myself? I don't know, Ms. Smith?
I'll make the motion to reduce the state aid and take the 500,000 off, put the 100,000 on.
400,000.
Add the, right, the reduction down to 100,000 from the 500,000, right?
Yep.
Add the 100,000 into the fund balance. And to come down 3 positions in the salary, representing those 3 high school positions.
Okay, Ms. Smith makes the motion. Second by Mrs. Rogalski. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0. Okay. So, we're not in a position to vote for the overall budget tonight because of all the reasons we've already talked about. So we can bring the budget Thursday night. I mean, we have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow night, but that was really if there was more we needed to work through. I think with what's left to work through, we could choose to do that Thursday in our open session because we do have that as our agenda item. Mr. Fiorello.
I just think that what we're going to be doing for budget amendments and changing the ask from the town and also approving the overall budget should be done in a full regular meeting. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay. I would agree with that, Mr. Fiorello. I think I can cancel tomorrow night's meeting all on my own.
Yeah.
I don't think I need a motion to do that. So, we will cancel tomorrow night's meeting, and we will take this up at Thursday's open session. And you guys have all the information you need. And if there's anything anybody else thinks they need before Thursday, reach out to Mr. McGrath, Dr. Thornton. Yes, Ms. Smith.
Dr. Thornton, I know I brought it up in the last meeting as well. Have you had any opportunity to talk to any of our representatives from the town at the state level to understand how this is being permitted to be able to cut 26 million and not use the funding formula?
I've talked to folks at the state level on this topic quite often. Yes.
Did you,
I
are there any, is it being done?
I don't see right now, it's early, it's March. I don't see an appetite right now to change the governor's budget, but that is what happened.
How is it possible to, if the funding formula is under the general laws of Rhode Island?
Yeah.
That's what I'm concerned about. How are they addressing the
Right.
fact that the funding formula is not following the general laws?
Not a funding formula expert, but I know for the first 7 years, they had this quadratic formula that had to be put in, and it was by statute. After that, it wasn't. It's still a formula, which is good, but I think now they can, if they choose, not follow it.
That's what I wanted to see, if it is locked in with that 7-year, the past 7-year in the legal side.
So, I'm sorry, I just need to ask this question, Dr. Thornton. So what you're saying is the state legislature, and the governor really, allowed the funding formula that we in this state have fought so hard for, they allowed it to sunset, essentially.
Essentially tweaked the multiplier. They usually used 3 New England states, I believe, maybe 4 states to get a number, a multiplier for the state aid. They left that and went to, I think, a CPI number.
Yeah, when they looked at the CPI and consumer price index, so they were using inflation, but they chose to use a different number than what was traditionally used. I would have to look back at my emails that I got from other business managers talking about it, but it was an adjustment in that inflation number that then caused the scale to be adjusted across the board for everybody. So,
And I'm sure there's plenty of astute people watching right now. I'm curious to see if we have a funding formula that's only kind of followed still. We're being shortchanged $500,000. How many districts, I wonder, that are entitled to far less than they're getting? You know what I mean? So how many districts that should be getting less are getting way more than the funding formula requires? And how many of those are near the top
Yeah.
of the state performance-wise, and how many of them?
Yeah, my understanding, talking to the people I talk to, no one's getting a surplus, if you will. They shaved 26 million off all the districts. So there was no like windfall for one district or another.
Okay, I think we are ready to move to public comment. If there's anyone from the public who would like to speak? Seeing none, next item on the agenda is adjournment. Motion by Mr. Fiorello. Second by Mrs. Vogel. All in favor? Aye.
And I have a meeting I have to adjourn as well.
Opposed? Oh, yeah, I'm adjourning the school committee meeting. 6-0 at 6:34 PM. Sorry, Mr. Collins.
All right, does anybody want to provide public comment for the Fiscal Management Subcommittee? Who missed out on the full committee? All right, seeing as there's none, I need a motion to adjourn. Motion by Ms. Smith, second by Ms. Vogel, all in favor? Ayes have it 3-0. The Fiscal Management Subcommittee is adjourned at 6:34 PM.
All right, thank you, everyone.